the only
We're
picture we
pleased
could
to
find.
have excuse me, Charlie Wasser here as our guest speaker today. Charlie has a high-tech background, so he should feel right at home with all of us techies here from the laboratory. He has a background in geology, computer science, and printing, and currently he's building a new business, creating and marketing high-end merchandise with a Rotary logo on them. This keeps him traveling all over the country. Charlie is a graduate of the District 5170 Leadership Academy. On the district level, he is the Communications Technologies Chair and Assistant Polio Plus Chair. And come July 1st, he will take over as the Polio Plus Chair in the district. He has built and maintains the Rotary Foundation Resource section on the district website. On the club level, Charlie is President-elect of Sunnyvale Rotary, International Service Chair and Strategic Planning Chair at that club. He's held a variety of other positions with his club. I think he told me while talking, he had trouble raising his right hand all the time, saying yes. Charlie's presentation today is an overview of where the term Polio Plus came from and what effect Rotary and Rotarians have had on polio. I doubt we could find a more knowledgeable person than Charlie to speak to us on this subject. And as you're aware, we've already kicked off our Polio Plus campaign, and we're offering matching points for Polio Plus donations of $100 or more. And I've placed pledge cards for Polio Plus on all the tables. I hope you will be inspired enough by Charlie's talk to fill one of these cards out and return it to me after the meeting. Thank you. Charlie?
Thank you for that nice introduction. And there we go. So the picture, so I look like when I smile, so I won't smile too much. I like what I see when I come to clubs like this, the idea of inducting a member, and also Paul Brown and I have communicated a lot on email. He's looking for material for the foundation. That's always, heartening to me. Air some of my club's dirty laundry. Sunnyvale, I don't think has done that good a job educating people as to what the foundation is, why the foundation, and so forth. That is one of the things we're starting to build on right now. In addition to being in charge of Polio Plus for the district, we obviously have to make a good showing. Or one of us is going to be in trouble. And I also enjoyed working with Phil last year when he was running the Paul Harris Society. And if it makes you feel any better, he said, for me to speak here today, I have to become a member of the Paul Harris Society. He doesn't give up. All right, now, are you?
Do you want to? You're welcome to do it. Should work.
Okay, a question that came up, Polio Plus, where did the plus come from? Apparently, when the program was starting, everyone got really ambitious, and there were other diseases. I don't really know offhand what they were. They wanted to do more than polio at a time. Polio itself has been the challenge it is. As we're winding down towards the point of being fully eradicated worldwide, there are other diseases that'll come up. One that probably going to start looking at, young man that just joined my club, he's 27, already ramping up to run for city council and whatever else, is in charge of a program in Santa Clara County called Hep B Free Santa Clara. That's basically trying to find a way to screen and immunize people in Santa Clara County for hepatitis B. And his main thrust is working within the Asian community where 1 out of 10 people have it, and most don't even know they have it. So that could be the type of thing that once polio is done, and it will be, you'll see the schedule once we're done here, but once that's done, other diseases will be coming up to look at.
Not working?
Not bad. It always helps to say I'm technology chair and I can't run it. Anyway, polio, really 30s through 50s was major epidemics in this country. I was a kid in the 50s, and I remember, seeing big quarantine signs for both smallpox and polio. I remember public pools being closed because of polio, and back then it was like, there's a kid at the other end of the pool, I'm over here, let's say he has polio, what does that have to do with me? But again, that was the mindset. They really didn't know what was causing that.
That thing's not working?
Oh, there we go.
No, it's not working.
What's that? It's not working. Okay. This, unfortunately, this was known as an iron lung farm. This was very common around the country. This was in the U.S. 30s, 40s, 50s, you would have seen these things. Now, mercifully, when you see one of these, it's on display at a Rotary meeting saying this is what used to be an issue. However, and incredibly, there are still people that are in these. There was a woman that contracted polio, I think it was in the 40s. She died sometime in the 90s, but she had never gotten out of the iron lung. She just didn't want to. And she led her life in an iron lung. So this was something that that really left a mark on people. Without going into names, one of the past district governors of this district had polio as a child, and he talks about his 6 months in an iron lung. And you can tell that it still bothers him to this day, and he's probably late 60s, early 70s. He still remembers what it was like. Next. Okay, and this is where I may get into trouble with the physician I was just having lunch with. In the 50s, Jonas Salk came up with the idea of killing the virus and using it for injections. And I remember as a child being injected, again, mid to late 50s, we were injected with it. Then towards the end of the 50s, early 60s, the idea of drops came in, using an attenuated virus. In other words, the virus was a little dead, almost dead. And as was pointed out to me at lunch, what Sabin developed was the vaccine for polio virus number 2. There are 3 of them. And I don't know what was the name of the doctor again that you work with?
Kaprowski.
Kaprowski apparently developed the vaccine for 1 and 3. And again, as you'll see in a few minutes, the wild polio virus 1 is the one that still exists today. And the numbers that I always point out too is it's kind of interesting that the USSR, remember the red commies, were the ones that started using it first. I always thought that was kind of curious that it took the U.S. until '63. And I remember again as a kid getting the sugar cubes. We'd lined up, my father, mother, my brother. My mother happened to be in Israel when they were giving out the 3rd sugar cube. And I spent a couple of years thinking, oh my God, she's going to get polio because she didn't get the sugar cube, because it was being so ingrained in us that it was important to get vaccinated. In 1979,
It's working.
it couldn't be. In 1979, there was a 3H grant that Rotary gave. 3H grant were grants that were over $200,000 or $300,000 to immunize people in the Philippines, the kids in the Philippines. That's where the first national immunization days took place. And just to show again who we have in the 5170, the fellow that was running that from the Philippines, I don't know if he was district governor or already a director, he ended up as RI president at one point, Matt Capris was the one that pushed that. He's the one that pushed it through Rotary. He's the one that started it. You want to look for who was the reason that, Rotary jumped into doing polio, it was Matt Capris. 1985, Rotary starts to lobby the World Health Assembly, which is part of the World Health Organization, which is part of the UN. Again, Rotary is the one driving the idea of eradicating polio. 1985, Rotary starts the Global Polio Eradication Initiative with its partners of World Health Organization, the United States' Center for Disease Control, and UNICEF. Again, both these from the UN. Notice, no Bill Gates yet. We'll get to Bill Gates in a while. The GPEI still exists today, and I'll show you a slide later how to get to the website, the district website, and you'll see all sorts of material that they've put out. They also have what's called an endgame strategy, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. 1988, Polio Plus started. The effort to date, and again, this is Rotary's effort. This is what Rotary had been doing. Rotary was the one that jump-started all this. We've immunized over 2 billion children, which is just an incredible thing, and mobilized 20 million volunteers. When I was first getting into reading, what I saw was 20 million. I go, oh my God, we've vaccinated 20 million kids. When you think about it, that's nothing. That wouldn't really be the solution. The solution is that we did 2 billion children. Okay, Rotary's advocacy task force, they played a major role in getting donor governments to give 1.5 billion. Since that time, this is a couple of years old at this point, this number, they've gotten more countries. I mean, out of nowhere, Canada just came in and said, here's 20 million. And you say, well, what good's 20 million? It's 60 cents for each drop of vaccine. That's quite a bit. It's quite a few vaccines. The governments are still kicking that in. Of course, as we'll see, there are other governments that are fighting the concept. Why are they fighting the concept? Someday they'll have to answer for that. Again, another thing that Rotary does, we talk about national immunization days. Basically what that is, the kids line up in the countries. The Rotarians will be there out of pocket if you've ever done one of these. They'll fly to the country, they'll pay for it. Rotary and whoever else puts up the money for the vaccines. I've never been on one, I'd like to go on one. People say it's a life-changing, experience. Anyway, so we mobilized volunteers, and we administered the oral polio vaccine, which is the drops. Okay, now, like I was saying, there's 3 types of polio. Type 2 has been eradicated worldwide in October 1999. Was it? In 2002, type 3 wild polio virus was eradicated in half of the world. And that was pretty much the Americas, South America, North America, and so forth. This is both good and bad where you hear this, because when you talk to a lot of people, a lot of young people, what they come out with is, well, why are we worried about polio? It's been eradicated. And it's like, no, it was eradicated in this part of the world. And it doesn't help when TV programs like Glee, if you've ever watched that, it's a high school musical type show, and there's like silly politics between this woman that was principal and the person running the Glee club. She decided everybody in the school should get vaccinated for all types of diseases. And the fellow running the Glee club looks at her and says, but why polio? That's been totally eradicated in the 50s. And I throw this in every now and then because you can tell I'm really passionate about this, making sure people get the message that no, it has not been eradicated. No, we cannot ignore it. Okay, now this is where this gets really, really weird. These are where the governments stopped the eradication. They just downright said, well, it wasn't going to work. At least in Nigeria's case. In Nigeria's case, unfortunately, the way they looked at it was, oh, Rotary, bunch of white guys coming to our country, all they want to do is sterilize our children. That's the horrific side of the reasoning. Finally, Nigeria is coming around, but in 2003, that's where it stopped. With India, they had a different political problem. And again, you think in terms of this, and it's like, how can this possibly be? The early 90s, there was a campaign in India to sterilize the Muslim population. The Hindus, through Indira Gandhi, again, Indira Gandhi, everybody loved Indira Gandhi, but one of her campaigns was pretty horrific. The idea was to sterilize the Muslim population. Somehow that was going to help India. So now we come back to 2000, 2001, 2002. They decided to do a lot of immunization, vaccination in India. The Muslim population, of course, said, wait a minute, we haven't heard anything from you in 10, 12 years. The roads are all broken. We don't get any kind of education. We don't have fresh water here. Now you show up at our door again and say you're going to save our children with these drops. So, of course, the idea was you're going to sterilize the children. If you just play the video, please. And this, again, is going to show you I don't know what else to say other than silliness or stupidity of some people. There's a woman that was going around door to door in the villages trying to convince people to get vaccinated.
Go plug in
What's that?
the sound of that video.
Yes. She was going around door to door, getting people to try to get their children vaccinated. And when they got vaccinated, the kid would get the pinky with purple or pinking, to say, okay, this kid's been vaccinated. And what you're going to see is that something like this, real humanitarian spirit, right? She's gone out of her way. She was threatened by the local insurgents. This was in the Muslim part of India. She was threatened by the local insurgents to stop doing it as in threatening her life. The people that had their children vaccinated, they were threatened also. So it was a fight to try to convince these people that play your politics outside this realm. Let's help save the children. But the children were being hurt in the middle of this, of course.
मैं जब मेरी शादी होकर आई ना तो मैं कुछ परेशान रही। अपने मेरे छोटे छोटे 3 बच्चे थे, है ना, तो इनको स्कूल में भी पढ़ाती हूँ। इनकी वजह से मैंने सोचा मैं क्या कुछ करना चाहिए। पहली बार मुझे घर से कदम निकालना अजीब सा लग रहा था कि मैं कैसे करूँगी। वरना मुसलमानों में कोई ये वाली ड्यूटी करने के लिए तैयार नहीं होता। तो ये अब हमारी हिम्मत है, क्योंकि उनके दिमाग में गलतफहमी हो जाती है कि ये पोलियो वाले हैं, गलत पोलियो की दवाई नहीं है, ये किसी और चीज़ की दवाई है। और कहते हैं नहीं हम मुसलमान हैं, तुम भी मुसलमान हो, हमको ये आपको गलत दवाई नहीं पिलवाना है।
मेरी फील्ड बुक में है, पूरा सर्वे हुआ है, 5 साल तक के बच्चे का मुझे मालूम है, बिना बगैर देखे बता दूंगी इस घर के अंदर छोटे बच्चे हैं। मुझे मालूम मेरा एरिया है ना कि ये मुजरिन बाजी है और ये पोलियो वाली बाजी है। तब मेरे को पूछा भी पहचान ली था। अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेहमान आ गए, तब क्या आप
फिर अब मैं डेली सोती भी हूँ तो ख्वाब में ये लगता है कि मैं हर बच्चे को रोजाना 1 हफ्ते तक दवाई पिला रही हूँ, और 1 हफ्ता तो हमें सपने में भी ये दिखता है कि हम उस गली में दवाई पिला रहे हैं, उस गली में दवाई पिला रहे हैं, तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है। शुरू पहली बार
दूध पर पिलाएंगे दवाई।
तो हमें बहुत परेशानी मुश्किल हुई थी। अब मैं चाहती हूँ कि मैं हमेशा हमेशा जब तक ये पोलियो खत्म ना हो, मैं पोलियो में सहयोग देने के लिए तैयार हूँ।
Again, you can tell she looks like a real belligerent, but they have to threaten. The woman was giving up her time.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you. She was giving up her time and life to help children, and she was being threatened. You know, her life was being threatened. Anyway, once this was finally, in effect, where 20 countries were reinfected from these 2 countries, it cost $450 million to repair the damage. And again, when you say reinfected, it's like, how do you know it comes from Nigeria? How do you know it comes from India? They do studies on the DNA. And we talked about the 4 endemic countries. It was India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria. Each one of them had its own little DNA marker, so they knew where it came from. Recently when the virus was found in Syria, they knew that it came from Pakistan. When the virus showed up in Somalia, they knew that it came from Nigeria. Okay, and this, again, in 2006, they couldn't fully implement the eradication, and India was looked at as the one that wasn't going to happen. It just couldn't happen there. As early as 2009, they had the most cases in the world. It was 740 cases a year. And this was one of the things where they started to say, it's just not going to happen. How about if we look at less than 500 cases a year? In other words, do something to maintain, the status quo. Of course, that's kind of silly because when you look at it, they say any one person that has polio can affect 10 people. You let 500 a year, all of a sudden you've got 5,000. You got 5,000, that becomes 50,000. That becomes 500,000 people out of that 500, okay? Not a good thing. Okay, and then again, and this number has also been corrected. That would be 300,000 now. If you just kind of go to the point where we're at, okay, let's sort of kind of help people. When you look at Syria, they're having trouble getting in there to do some help. The number is something like 7 out of 10 children are not immunized. And these are parts of the world where the children still need to be immunized. And again, it's the political upheaval in places like Syria and Somalia that are causing those problems. These are the case numbers from last year. And again, wild polio virus, it's only type 3. And you'll notice that in 2002, the total number was 223. 2013 was 369, 145 from this was still 4 countries, 4 endemic countries, and then the non-endemic, the 224. If you remember in the news with Somalia with 180, that's what that is. And then there's Syria. And this just gives you a quick overview. Notice Somalia stands out with the 183. Now that's basically under control. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's the type of thing where things have to be vigilant. We have to keep going on this. The problem is education. The problem is sanitation conditions. When you look at some of the pictures, and I've done some global grants, one in Africa and such like that, when you look at the water supply that people have, you go, wow, that's really pretty to be living out in the jungle or out in the woods. The problem is they use the water for drinking. They also use the water to do their sanitary business, which means the water's no longer fresh, which means if there's some sort of polio virus, it gets back into the water system. But these numbers, I think these numbers are good. These two, will come up in a minute. The reason why I'm using those as an example, there's a positive at the end of this. Okay, this is part of the positive. The Global Polio Eradication Initiative has a plan in place where by 2018, they fully expect the world to be declared eradicated of polio. Perhaps there's going to be situations with the Somalias of the world because the plan does take into account that there will be political upheaval. There's no way to control that. Maybe it'll stretch out a little bit. But this point right here in 2014, beginning in 2015, they expect the 3 endemic countries that are still left to stop transmitting virus so that it'll be under control. That being the case, they will still continue to do vaccinations through 2018. They'll be getting rid of oral polio vaccine 2. For the most part, again, type 2 has been eradicated. What they're finding with the oral is that in something like 1 out of 1 million, 1 out of 2 million, the people getting the vaccine are contracting polio. You know, again, very, very small number. You go, well, is that fair to them? No, but, you know, the numbers are so great that it was worth the risk. They'll then switch over to IPV, which is inactivated polio virus. For the most part, it'll be injected. There'll be some oral left over for the type 1 and type 3. And then they expect complete containment. This line is really the one that I'm really happy about, that they're doing that, where they say objective and legacy planning. Goes back to the example I gave with hepatitis B. Once this is done, once polio is declared eradicated, the way smallpox was, there are other diseases around the world that will be looked at. The infrastructure's in place, the knowledge base is in place. Again, remember with India, we talked in terms of 740 people a year. They've been the first ones out of the 4 endemic countries to be taken off. This is a celebration in India. Call it India Gate. You know, there's going to be 3 more of these. There's going to be Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria very soon, very shortly. But this is where, you know, you look at that and you look at what they said about India. Remember, in 2006, they said the world's coming to an end. This is never going to work. It's impossible to do India. India was the first of the 4 to get taken off the list. Now, of course, Rotary fundraising. A few years back, we got a challenge from Bill Gates, okay? And Bill Gates has been much maligned over the last few years because he hasn't been, the view was he hasn't been giving enough credit to Rotary. I don't know if he got the message or what, misinformation, but he now comes out and says Rotary is running this program, the Gates Foundation is helping it. But if you look at the numbers, Rotary International has contributed $1.2 billion. The Gates Foundation has also put in $1.2 billion. So they're going parity. They really are pushing ahead. Anyway, if you remember the challenge from a few years ago, the overall challenge was if we were able to raise $200 million, Gates would put in 355, which they did. The date we were supposed to have it by was June 30th. Rotary got it January 17th, 2012. Gates put in another 50 million. So that 355, the 555 was actually 605. Okay, now the second Gates challenge, this is underway right now. You may have heard about this. Basically what they've got is every year, for every dollar up to 35 million that Rotarians put in, that Rotarians raise, Gates will match it by $2. So in other words, you put in $1, you get $3. We put $3 in a Polio Plus, up to 105 a year. That's for 5 years. That's through 2018. Because again, he's also sensitive to the deadline that they're setting, the schedule they're setting. Okay, and here for local fundraising ideas. Use the media for PR about Polio Plus events. You know, again, education's a very important thing, like everything else in the world. You got to be careful. People don't understand. I was in a bank, and I was talking to this young man, 22, 23, and in my normal Rotary mode, I start talking about Rotaract. He's like, Rotaract, Rotary, what's that? And I said, well, you know, we're eradicating polio and whatever. And I've done enough sales. I know that when I'm looking at somebody, it's kind of a weak smile looking like this. He has no clue what I'm talking about. And I looked at him and I said, well, what is it, polio? He goes, yeah. And I said, okay, do you know what polio is? And he goes, wasn't it some, you know, crippling disease out of the 40s and 50s, but that's gone? I said, well, not quite. That evening, my nephew, who just got a job at Google, you know, was at dinner, and I said, okay, here's this smart kid. He's got a job at Google, and I told him the story. And he said, oh, no, polio. I know what polio is. And he explained it. He said, but we don't have to worry about it anymore because it's been eradicated in this country. What's the big deal? I was like, okay, half the battle. So anyway, so education's very important. Interact clubs, I believe they brought in 75,000 in 1 year, something like that for Polio Plus. You know, I'm hoping to get them to work with us again. Have a bowl-a-thon, bocce, pancakes for polio, painting pinkies purple. It's the kind of thing I referred to in India. You know, just do it as kind of a game. Have people come in and give them a little color on their finger, give them something to talk about. Have a combination fundraiser, such as a Polio Plus fundraiser with a membership social. You know, what I'm going to be doing with my club, we're going to have a Chamber of Commerce mixer. You know, Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce. Part of it is going to be about Polio Plus. Now, two of the things that I'm starting and is underway right now is a Mother's Day card program. And if you could pass this around. The colors on the final printed card will be much more vibrant. And Phil's going to get subjected to my talk Friday morning if I can make it to Pleasanton at 7:30 in the morning. And that's not a given. Anyway, the way this program works is the district is picking up the tab of printing the cards. You know, so the district is paying 25 cents or something a card. And we're going to sell them to Rotarians around the district and anybody else that you know of for $10. All right, so and the $10 will go straight to Polio Plus. So when you write your check for the card, it would be made out to TRF, or the Rotary Foundation. Your TRF chair will be monitoring this. If you want the Paul Harris points, the TRF chair will be submitting paperwork. You're shaking his head no. You don't want to fill out the paperwork. Yeah. Anyway, the way it's going to work too is I will get all this information April 1st. It'll give us 2 weeks to get the cards printed. The cards will be distributed at the district conference on April 12th, which is a month before Mother's Day, so you'll have a month to give them out. Part of where you can sell these, you think about it, you've got a mother, you've got a daughter, you've got grandkids, give it to the grandkids to give to your daughter. You'll have uses for it in the family. One of the things that Sunnyvale has done where we raise $2,000 is we give it to senior living facility. They give it to the ladies that are in these facilities. And apparently, the one that we work with in Sunnyvale, the women make a big deal out of it. They're all excited to get these cards. In addition to the pretty pictures, the idea of polio, that they're somehow involved with polio, even being in the facility. A goal that I've set for the district is $500 a club. Sunnyvale's already kicked in 1,000. Cupertino's already kicked in 500. Susan Valenta's buying 20 or 30 cards. I don't know what the number is, so it's ranking up. The 500 a club isn't that much. If that's all we do this year, we've brought in $26,000. Add that to the Gates thing, it's $75,000, $76,000. Next year, we're putting together a bicycle fundraiser. It's one of these deals where riders will put in $1,000 to ride. They'll raise money, and that means they'll go to Rotarians, they'll go outside Rotarians. We're going to try to get media coverage, TV, radio, and whatever else. I'm hoping to be able to center this in San Jose. So far, they're not very cooperative. The costs there are going to be prohibitive. It's going to be just $30,000 in permits and whatever, and that's just crazy. Any advice on any of this would be helpful. Nonetheless, it'll be a route 25, 50, and 100 miles. The riders raise money, sponsorships. Part of being in San Jose, I was hoping to be able to get the Sharks involved. The Sharks are very generous with Rotary functions. And again, if you have any questions, this is who you can reach. Jim Mealy's the current chair. Roger Hassler's chair of the Rotary Foundation. That's me on the bottom, and I'll send the slide to Phil so you can pass it around if you want it. If you want information, polioeradication.org. That's the website made by the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. I let my ego fly, and I'm writing a blog on polio. It's charliewasser.wordpress.com. You can get to that from the district website also. There's about 4 or 5 entries at this point that discuss different aspects of polio. If you want to get information locally on the district website, you go to the district website, click where it says the Rotary Foundation, click where it says Polio Plus, and you have all this information in front of you. Again, Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Does Rotary deserve more credit? Again, the subject we were talking about before with Bill Gates. And then just the different ways of looking at it. You can either look at that as just your own education. You want to send people, you want to send your kids to it to read about it. Polio is not a dead issue yet. If, for example, if we dropped out, we said, well, okay, we're close enough with polio, who cares? Within 2 or 3 years, you saw that number 200, it could be as high as 300,000 a year. We don't want to drop out. We want to educate people and we want to raise funds. Any questions?
Any questions for Charlie?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yeah.
Once-
When is Gates going to join Rotary?
Yeah.
Somebody gave him a Rotary cap.
Yeah.
That was a number.
Yeah.
He's an honorary Rotarian.
Once polio is eradicated in the world, are we going to still have to give vaccines worldwide, or is it going to be done?
Well, that's what they're hoping that by 2018. In other words, the end of this year, they're expecting the transmission to stop if they have it on the mark. And it'd be 3 more years. During that 3-year period, they're going to be vaccinating quite a bit. Now, again, what I was saying, the good news, I forgot to mention, when you talk about the 180 people in Syria that got, in Somalia that got the disease, within a couple of days, there were people on the ground vaccinating children, and you haven't heard anything from that area since then. And that was, I guess that one started in May or June of last year. If there was going to be another outburst or outbreak, we would have heard about it. So the Polio Eradication Initiative group knows what they're doing. It's like a 100-page document. I'd be glad to share with anybody. It could take you about 3 or 4 weeks to read through it. Very, very complex. But they have every step done. They expect blow-ups like that. They expect to send people, using Obama's term or whoever's term, boots on the ground. Getting people to do the vaccinations. But after 2018, I don't think there's going to be much need for it. We don't get vaccinated for smallpox anymore. It's gone.
In those countries where they're getting polio, I think, what age group gets polio?
The children, for the most part, the
The
children
adults
get it.
don't get it?
No, that's, again, I don't understand that part of the transmission.
Mike.
I don't, as you can tell, I don't like mics, I guess I needed her. I don't understand the transmission yet, why it's only for the kids. You know, again, when I was getting the sugar cubes, my parents were getting it, and they were already in their 40s, early 50s. So.
What's being done about Pakistan and Nigeria?
Well, that's where the problems are. That's where the blow-up is, okay? Incredibly, Afghanistan's probably going to come off the list next. You know, but Pakistan and Nigeria are fighting it. Nigeria is coming around to it, and it's not like it's all over the country. There's just certain tribal areas that are still the problem. So what it comes down to is finding people that can go in there, which gives me the other sales pitch for the foundation. The other area I like is the peace and conflict resolution scholarships. You know, educate enough of these young people that are willing to go into these tribal areas and try to negotiate the peace. If nothing else, I mean, for a while, the Taliban in Pakistan they were agreeing to truce and ceasefires to vaccinate the kids. Why that went away, I don't know, because the latest thing is they start killing health workers. You know, so there's obviously a major problem there. But that's, you know, again, that's a good question. That's what's holding it up. That's part of why they didn't finish by 2005.
Thank you, Charlie. We have for you a bottle of wine or a bottle of olive oil, choice. Both local products. Thanks a lot, Charlie. I have a couple of minutes. I'm going to update something